Well, hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're at. Creatives, community, and kind folks out there. This is RPG with DJ. Unfortunately, we heard very sad news from one of the greatest creators out there, the oldest in the world, Stan Lee. So I thought I would take a break from our usual broadcasts and just do a bit of a talk thematically with in our RPG community to talk about Stan Lee and the things he's created, and of course, flavoring that into what we do. Now, of course, right here, it's not my usual setup. I've got on my, let's see if I can show this here. I've got, oh, wrong side. I've got my my Spider-Man fleece top on here. I'm going to preamble just a little bit to let people get in. Yes, it is official Marvel. And next to me is a Stan the Man right here. It's I ended up getting it as a gift. It's got a signature on the bottom there. And of course, in the background, if you can tell, way up, let's see if I can point right here. That is a curtain in my movie room. That's Wonder Woman right there. Over top of my head, that's James Dean. And there's Wizard of Oz. And right there is, let's see, there's some Doctor Strange there. That's War Machine. There are the Avengers. There's a movie ticket and stuff. But anyway, so I'm a big fan of, oh, right, there's a poster that's got like little movie themes or something on it. But anyway, we're going to talk about some of the top 10 to 15 characters Stan Lee has created and kind of shaping those tropes into what we consider today. You know, basically how it is, what he created and how we've kind of absorbed those tropes into the RPG experience and why he's so legendary, even though in hindsight, I'm sure he would even say that it was something very simple that he's done. So let's go into some of our, let's see, Stan. See if we pull this up here. Yeah, most iconic creations. Hey, kitty. Yeah, we have ourselves another Stan Lee fan. Come on over. Come on. All right. So, good morning, everybody who's joined into the chat. Boy, it's not seen too many people out there. It's all right. We'll get going because I'm sure there are many people who probably want to take a look at this. Kiwi, good morning. Yeah, we're just taking a break. I'm still going to do Tips and Tricks Tuesday, World Building Wednesday, and all that. It's just going to be a day behind from our usual demi-daily deep dives, just because I want to give a little bit of honor to someone that's affected my life for a very long time. Now, one of the things that it seems rather strange to us today, although it was a big deal at the time, was that Stan Lee, as his legal name would be, is that he created characters that had problems, right? So let's go into one iconic character or group of characters that he created was the Fantastic Four. Now, the Fantastic Four, of course, you have yourself, the dad, he's got a wife, and, you know, she's got a brother, and then you've got the best friend. And this was not just a group of superheroes that got together, but they were family, and so some of them were more than family in many ways. Of course, talking about Ben Grimm. So the Fantastic Four, of course, made up Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Girl, eventually Visible Woman, because that was a trope back then. Human Torch and the Thing, and they each kind of represented something that we in the RPG community would probably consider to be elementals, right? Mr. Fantastic being like water, Invisible Woman being air, and then you have Human Torch as fire, and then Ben Grimm as earth. And so using that elemental trope in in the RPG type of thoughts and feelings is very much a thing, right? I mean, eventually, really, I'm sure Stan Lee probably pulled from the classic, and I'm not sure what culture it came from, but the idea of earth, air, fire, water is definitely what the Fantastic Four was made of. And of course, you had your interpersonal problems, you had family issues, the dad character, Mr. Fantastic, being, far too deep into his work and kind of ignoring everyone else, being a little bit too logical. And then you had, but of course he could stretch and everything. And it's the problem of him trying to be everywhere at once and do everything and keep everything under control, kind of like the glue that pulled everyone together, i.e. the stretching. And then you had Invisible Woman, who she was like the silent partner. She was always in the background, always supporting everyone, always uplifting everyone, protecting the people that she loved. But unfortunately, at that time, the trope of the silent woman, the woman in the background, the one who never said anything but was always blindly devoted, was a thing. Of course, as time has gone on, those tropes have kind of faded away, but she still has the ability to turn invisible and make her little invisible force fields, essentially like telekinetically, right? And then you had Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. Of course, he's a hothead. He's a fly by the seat of his pants kind of character, and that, of course, is emblematic of his powers. And then you had Ben Grimm, the defender of his friends and family, the one who likes to stand forward and basically like protect the family. And of course, he's the brick of the group of RPG thing, right? The brick, the shield, the meat shield or whatever, and able to take a lot of punishment. And also receive punishment from his looks as well. People thought he was a monster, no matter how many good things he did. Many people were still afraid of him, except for the far more innocent types, children. He had a girlfriend that was blind one time and like fell in love with him, and he loved her. And so he kind of represented, sometimes, no good deed goes unpunished. And Ben Grimm kind of represented that, the so-called dumb lug, but he was very lovable. He's like a big teddy bear if you get to know him. And so the Fantastic Four very much represented those ideals. Now, of course, we move on to another iconic character that maybe not so iconic in the public sphere, but those of us that loved comic books is Daredevil. He created Daredevil with Bill Everett. And Daredevil's absolutely, many of us would claim that Daredevil is like Marvel's Batman, although some people would argue with you. If they do a deep cut, they would see like Moon Knight is Marvel's Batman. But Daredevil, some people would say he was a bargain basement Batman as well. But in many ways, Stan Lee kind of like incorporated the seat of the pants kind of character. And everything. Oh, Jason Hoover says, in the chat says, I'm going to be in and out taking kids to school, no problem. You will see my ugly mug later on. All right. So Daredevil kind of represented like almost the image of like, if Batman lived in New York and was real, what would he be like? Now, of course, as time is going on, Frank Miller really took him down a dark path, but Daredevil laid the seeds, and really in many ways he represents like an iconic handicap hero because he's blind, but then his other senses became far more powerful. So Daredevil was blind and fought crime at night, and of course he was he's unabashedly Catholic and goes in and out of his Catholicism throughout the storylines of Daredevil, and absolutely is a protector of Hell's Kitchen. Today, maybe Hell's Kitchen isn't so much what it is in the comic books, but yeah, Hell's Kitchen, very nasty neighborhood, fighting crime and using, basically essentially dressing in a costume, a couple of, his billy clubs, of course, was his walking stick for to navigate as being blind. And that's basically all he had, really. Was taught by martial arts teacher, so he had to kind of throw that in there because that was a trope, right? Finding the master that would teach you martial arts. His dad was a boxer, and his dad was like from the streets, and decided to do the right thing, but it cost him his life. And as a child, he has to wants to honor his father, and never was received an education from a dad who maybe didn't have the best education, and was involved in basically a violent activity to support his child in boxing, but still left an indelible mark on his dad. And so very much was like an antithesis to a Batman type character. Instead of being rich and powerful, basically lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with his son, trying to raise him. And so there Matt Murdock ends up becoming, rising above his station, becoming getting an education, becoming a lawyer, and then returning to his roots. So that's a very big thing. The idea of like having family roots. So Stan Lee also helped create Scarlet Witch and the twin brother Quicksilver. And Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in the comic books started out very much as super villains, and then they quickly became heroes in the Marvel universe. And it says what many people don't know is that Stan Lee intended to have the characters leave their villainy from the start. So this was the idea of actually changing the outlook of villains to heroes, which was rather unheard of in the comic book industry. At the time, it was very much basically heroes were heroes, villains were villains, leave it at that. And this was his foray into redeeming characters, or having characters that actually had, guilt. Scarlet Witch, if you don't know, is both a combination of having learned real magic and has the ability to shape reality. She was both an Avenger and a part of the X-Men, as well as being a villain and a hero. So this is very much taking the trope of having a character with a lot of growth, a lot of background, and a lot of problems. As there was one storyline where Scarlet Witch literally bent reality to create her own children, and when she turned her back, her children would literally disappear from existence. And there were so many other storylines where she changed, where she altered reality. So you go to Wikipedia or some type of superhero Wikipedia, look it up. Scarlet Witch is a pretty interesting character, and very much from the start, Stan Lee wanted her to change her background from villainy to heroism, and that was unheard of at the time. And there are many tropes where we do that, right? Sometimes we'll make up characters that used to be villains or were part of the villainy. In many ways, think of like tieflings or cambions or the dragonborn, or even a drow who've come from evil origins to take up the mantle of good and justice. All right, so then we go on to the Inhumans. The Inhumans isn't quite as popular, but in many ways, the Inhumans were the superhero version of Game of Thrones in many ways. A royal family of individuals that went into something called the Terrigen Mists, and the Terrigen Mist would modify their bodies and give them great powers. And there was a silent but deadly king, essentially Blackagon Boltagar, Black Bolt, who led the family. And there was very much a Game of Thrones-ish type of royalty to them. They lived on the dark side of the moon in a city there that humanity didn't know about. Of course, it's been visited a million times. You're like, why doesn't humanity know who they are now? But anyway, and that's very much what Inhumans was about. And I wouldn't say that, George R.R. Martin stole anything from the Inhumans, but I would say that if you wanted to think of superheroes in Game of Thrones, that would be the Inhumans. Of course, it was Nick Fury. Nick Fury was a World War II character and has been around in the comic books for a long time. Nick Fury, I would put into the category of like the NPC that ties everything together, right? He's the gentleman that he's the quest giver. He's the the healer. In sometimes he's actually been like a GMPC. Nick Fury is that character that like he runs Shield. He comes in when the characters need someone to give them the motivation to engage in a far off quest to another realm, another planet, someplace hidden on Earth. We need some heroes to solve this, and so Nick Fury steps in and does it. Now, of course, he does more terrestrial things. He's far more militant, more black ops and whatnot. Whereas characters like the Watcher or in DC's The Stranger are more arcane. They're more celestial problems that they bring heroes together. So Nick Fury very much so is the quest-giving NPC that's able to hold his own, so he can kind of go along with the characters and point out information, basically giving them the rundown. Hey, you're going into a country with a dictator that has great technology, or you're about to fight mutants that have been mutated by an alien spore or something like that. And of course he pats the superheroes on the rear end. Go for it, guys, I'll be here when you're done. And so that's kind of Nick Fury. Now, of course, I'm downplaying Nick Fury as a character on his own, but I'm just talking about the RPG portion of it. And then we have ourselves Black Panther. Black Panther is morning. What's going on, Zala? Yeah, just going over a number of characters that have influenced, might influence, or might in the future influence our RPG content. From, of course, Stan the Man. There he is over my shoulder, looking in, making sure that I'm doing it right. He's like staring me in the face. Yeah, dude, what's going on? He's had a great influence on me, so I thought I would diverge today. We will still do our tips and tricks and world building Wednesdays and Thursday, Third Pillar Thursday, and all that. We're just going to be a day behind. So I thought I would do this as kind of a tribute and to talk about RPGs and the things that Stan Lee has created, and for people to think to themselves like, I didn't know he did that, and then I didn't realize those tropes were a thing. So that's what we're here to do today. Black Panther was a character that Stan Lee created. Now, Black Panther was created in 1966 before the Black Panther Party existed. So there are some people who think that we'll say here, though many people associate the character's name with the Black Panther Party, the character's debut actually predates their founding by 3 months. So the Black Panther superhero existed, and this was Stan Lee. This was a time when he created a premier superhero that was unabashedly a minority, a black character. Now there were many. Don't get me wrong. There were many like a Luke Cage and Falcon and some others that were sidekicks. But this was the time where he was like, no, this character he's not only a premier, he's a king. And in many ways, he created him kind of as the Mary Sue of the Marvel universe. He took out the Fantastic Four. He beat up Captain America. He's a ruler of his own country. He's brilliant. He's smart. He's fast. He's quick. He's a kick-ass person. They live in a country that's got the greatest technology in the entire world. And oh yeah, by the way, Captain America's shield, yeah, it's made from a material that can only be found in one location, and that's in my country. And so, a lot of the characters. That was Stan Lee's way of saying, oh, you guys want to march and be racist and spit on people because they want to sit in the front of the bus or sit at a lunch counter and drink a malted or something like that. F you, I'm going to do this. And so that was Stan Lee's basically middle finger to everybody. Stan Lee being able to associate himself with that because at the time, there was a lot of Jewish hate as well. And so this is 1966. Jason Hoover says, I feel people identify with a lot of Stan Lee's characters because they had real problems that real people had. I absolutely agree with you, dude. Like to us today, looking at like the Marvel characters in the movies, and of course many graphic novels and comic book lines, it's no big deal for characters to have problems, right? Society hates them, they have financial problems, they're having marital problems, those kind of issues. But Stan Lee was the first to say, hey, listen, I want to make a character who has problems. I haven't gotten to him yet, but you know who I'm talking about, right? He created characters that had those problems and then used those in many ways shaping real life tropes, real life issues into comic books. Azala says, I never liked Black Panther because he is specifically a Mary Sue type character. Yeah, it was. Remember, this is a time I agree with you, because nowadays many of those characters that were Mary Sue characters, right? The character that never makes a mistake, the character that's strong and quick and brilliant and rich, and everyone loves them, and never has relationship problems, and those characters have long since been broken. Those tropish kind of things have been broken. Black Panther very much in the beginning of the career was set up that way, and I believe Stan Lee did that as a kind of a shout out to the people that were that kind of wrapped hate around themselves like a blanket, as if to say, you know what, F you, I'm going to make a character that comes in, dominates, and shows African Americans that they can have some pride for themselves. Now, of course, as time is going on, mind you, this is 1966, right? Time is going on, you can get stale stories, just like Superman, right? There's a ton of Superman stories that just got stale early, and so many writers had to come along and kind of revamp the character to attempt to tell better stories with them, by giving them weaknesses and challenges and things. And I think the Black Panther character ended up becoming far more of like a politician in their storylines, just in relationship to DC characters, like Aquaman has moved into that realm, and Wonder Woman has moved into that realm many times as being part of a larger community, and having to choose between sometimes being right or doing the right thing. And something that many superheroes didn't have a chance to do, right? They punch someone in the face and we're done. And then if you're if you're a leader of a kingdom, you might have to suck it up and like let a villain go away, just to be able to say, okay, I need to do the right thing versus being right. Azala says, now what amuses me is how Dr. Doom is one of the few to really beat him. Dr. Doom, now there's a character worth talking about. Yeah, my only problem with Dr. Doom has always been like, not recently, but back in the day was always like, and I've gotten away again. I've got science and I've got magic. Yeah, Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom, classic character, classic big bad. End up taking Silver Surfer's powers back in the mid 80s or something, and then end up transferring his mind to a passerby and stuff. It was a bunch of stuff with that. But it's not that Black Panther was unbeatable. It was that he came out the gate like, how do you establish a character, whether it's a hero or a villain? You have them beat the best, right? You go to a prison yard and you beat the best. It shows, well, if you beat the best, that must mean you are the best. And so that's how Stan Lee introduced him. Now we go on to Hawkeye. Now, Hawkeye, of course, is not a big major character. Hawkeye has always been like a B-list character at best, maybe C-list, but he originally was introduced as a villain and very quickly became a superhero. And Hawkeye has always been like the big brother, like the bro dude in superherodom. Always part of the Avengers, but on and off has been like a leader and then a sidekick and always around. And so like I don't want to say he's lived through plot armor, but Hawkeye's kind of been that character like, hey, when we want problems, but we really don't want our main character to go through those problems, let's tack it on to Hawkeye and we're done with it, Yeah, Azal says, but Doctor Doom is one of those villains that's good intentions. The people of his country love him, and Black Panther's only mentor Spirit thinks that Doom's future is the best. Yeah, we're not. I'm not here to talk about who's better or worse. We're just talking about we're here to honor the man, the myth, and the legend. I'm sure Stan Lee had a lot to do with creating Doctor Doom because he created the Fantastic Four. We all have our best and worst. There's no art is subjective. So, it's it is not, there is no measuring stick to see who's the best or the worst. And of course, villains kind of represent a territory that's going into it. So that's the end of that. Doctor Strange is another character that Stan Lee created, and Doctor Strange, of course, able to, mystic arts and such, and helped create the character with Steve Ditko as the artist, and was able to do a very cerebral, esoteric kind of thing. And many of the spells that Doctor Strange cast was, the things like the Eye of Agamotto and Hoary Hosts of Hogoth. It just created money, very silly and legendary spells and such, and they were always very strange, and they like rhymed with each other, lots of alliteration using those. So yeah, Doctor Strange was a great character. Now, I never got into collecting Doctor Strange, and I know he used to always show up whenever it was a big massive creature from like another world or another dimension was trying to move into ours. Doctor Strange would show up and bring the other characters and say, hey, we need help. And so of course, defending the Earth against incursions from other dimensions and other realms. As I was, hold on, let me get my measuring stick. I think you were born with it there, sir. Really? And a long one at that. So, yeah, Doctor Strange was a very esoteric character, able to get into like, and probably dig a little deeper into Stan Lee's older forays into like strange adventures where it was about vampires and spirits and mysticism and possession and things like that. And it says Lee took the character in a slightly different direction, inspired by 1930s Chandu the Musician radio program, developing the character's style of magic use. Stan Lee kind of went wild with all the names of the spells and what they did and stuff like that. It kind of silly in hindsight, but what a great character too, dude. Now we go into Ant-Man. Ant-Man, another character that Stan Lee created, maybe because of his attraction to insects. We haven't gotten there yet. You know who I'm talking about. We haven't gotten to the pinnacle character, but yeah, Ant-Man creating Hank Pym and his Pym particles and could shrink down. And yeah, what did he create? 1962, and of course, Ant-Man had become the butt of a joke, right? I could shrink down to the size of an ant with the strength of a human being, and everyone's just like kind of laughs at Ant-Man. Ant-Man in the Marvel universe is kind of associated with kind of held the position of Aquaman for a long time in the DC universe. Of course, today, we got Ant-Man, a movie, kind of a heist / comedy movies, and able to do a ton of different things with shrinking and growth and things like that. So yeah, Ant-Man, a classic, if butt of the joke kind of character, but kind of cool. Of course, we go to Foolish Kiwi says, I always liked how a lot of Stan Lee's settings incorporated fantasy-esque magic into some of his heroes. Yeah, he didn't really hesitate to do that. Like today, you don't really see that. It's more pseudo science, and Stan Lee was very much from like a pseudo magical kind of realm in many ways. And one of the things we got to remember is this stuff didn't he didn't have a pattern to pull from. Today, we've got the tropes, but he began those tropes back then, and today, many writers have taken over, of course, since Stan Lee created them, to pull them into different directions. But a lot of those characters were not, there was no basis to pull from. It was Stan Lee creating off the top of his head. So, there was a lot of mysticism into it. I have to absolutely agree with you. Maybe they start to change because, after like Cold War, 60s, 70s, nuclear things, maybe a lot of those mystical characters change more to science. I'm just coming at off the top of my head, but a lot of the comic book world, a lot of the comic book world was reflected in the comic book world reflected our real world anxieties many times, and so they wrote a lot of those things. Zala says the pinnacle character. You mean the Hulk, the ultimate bug stomper? Oh, we're getting there now. Right now, I'm actually toggling on a website called Stan Lee's 15 Most Iconic Superheroes, and we've been counting down. Now, this is their countdown, not mine. I'm sure we took these in a different order. It'd be like, what? You put them at number 7? Get the hell out of here. Ant-Man being above Doctor Strange to me is a little bit strange as well. Ant-Man's number 7. We're getting the Black Widow's number 6. I didn't want to count them. I just wanted to go through them. But Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, 1964, Russian spy. I'm sure very much into, bringing up the tropes of like the sexy kick-ass Russian spy. Of course, this was, I'm sure he was influenced quite a bit from movies and movie tropes as well as real world things. There was a Cold War going on. Maybe even try to, and I'm projecting here, right? Maybe even try to instill that, like, even though we're on opposite sides, we're on the same side politically. We're all fighting for the same things. And there something has to be said for like the master of disguise, the kick-ass, and of course, you got to have the super tight leather outfit, cat suit, right? That's just a thing. And of course, you never knew if you could trust her. She very much in the beginning of her career as Black Widow, very much could not be trusted. You never knew, like, she would need the hero's help, but at the same time kind of turned against them. So in the RPG sense, which I didn't mention that with the other characters, in a role-playing sense, role-playing game sense, she very much was like, could be a PC that would like was with the group, but also had their own agenda, going back to like characters like Ant-Man and Doctor Strange and like Hawkeye as characters. I believe those characters role-playing wise, even Black Panther, many times those characters were very much like Black Panther could absolutely be a role-playing trope of the character who is a noble and a king of their own country, but they're slumming it with everybody else, right? Hawkeye, the greatest bromance in the world, where he, the Legolas of the RPG community. Of course, you have a wizard, Doctor Strange, and the master of magic. That in and of itself is like it could have been very easily been taken from a Gandalf type character. And of course we have Ant-Man, very much like the incorporating like the comedy relief in RPGs. So many people play gnomes and halflings and have to pick they want to play a bard or something like that. And there's something about it being like the comedy relief in the RPG community. Now, Azala, I'm going to have to hurt your feelings a little bit on this one. The Hulk is ranked at number 5 on their list. I'm not sure. When we go down here, I don't know if I would rank him at number 5, but sure, I get it. Stan Lee created the Hulk with artist Steve Ditko for his own series, The Incredible Hulk, in 1962. Stan Lee stated that the character was inspired by a combination of Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or Frankenstein's monster, I guess would be more specific. Both stories which also feature a brilliant scientist who creates a monster. And, very much so a superhero, trope. When the Hulk was first created, he had gray skin. I think that was an inking issue. And then he had green skin, but, very much, anger, rage, turning into a beast. Frankenstein's monster, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, the werewolf would be another one of those things, having a beast inside of you and you can't control it. But the Hulk, a lot of times we don't really think about it, but the Hulk was absolutely Uh, the Hulk was like one of those characters that would hurt a child, would befriend, would sit in the woods and befriend a butterfly, and or look at a deer or a rabbit, and would just be mesmerized by them, and wouldn't hurt a fly. But when you were evil, he would just come and kick ass. And strangely enough, I don't know if any of you guys are old enough to remember it, but the Hulk TV show was a pretty dark show. I mean, this guy, Bill Bixby playing, David Bruce Banner. I think they changed his name from Bruce to David because I think they thought Bruce was too. And this came from Stan Lee's mouth. I think he was quoted as saying that they thought Bruce was too effeminate, which is stupid. But anyway, David Banner, walked the countryside and would get pissed off because bullies would always be around, and he kicked their ass and then have to move on because the government was hunting down this, Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk. That is a trope in and of itself, right? The uncontrolled monster. Now, for Azala's taste, the Hulk hit number 5. We got Thor at number 4. Thor is a great one, right? And here I'm going to read this quote for quote. Before commenters get upset, no, Stan Lee was not the original creator behind the Norse mythological deity, whose earliest records date back to the 2nd century. The guy's 94 after all. Stan Lee was this is when this was written. Stan Lee was the creator of Marvel's version of the God of Thunder, along with his brother Larry Lieber and artist Jack Kirby. And his first appearance was in Journey into Mystery number 83 in 1962. Thor definitely, like, the whole, like, talking with the fake mythology. Zymox says, Zymox 111 says, Bruce is one letter away from brute. I figured that was the point. I'm not sure why television needed to change his name. I mean, the character's name was Bruce. The man's name, I'm sure Brute is pretty close to Bruce, and that might get mixed up in the language of the show. So if people were trying, hey, Bruce, there was a Brute, and then people would get confused with the tongue alliteration. I'm sure they had some kind of reason. I do remember seeing a video interview where Stan Lee was a little bit like he was told that they changed the name for sexual identity reasons. I could find that video somewhere. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. But I was just like, really? What, dude? Really? That's kind of strange. I can't imagine Stan Lee lying about that. So I'm like, but television execs are, many of them are probably a-holes as well. But yeah, Thor, the god of God of Thunder, absolutely positively like the bro man, right? Drinks, parties, somewhat of a womanizer, going on these big giant quests and things, and of course bringing in the Norse mythology when DC at the time probably had like a Greek or Roman mythology in their world with Wonder Woman and the Greek gods, Zeus and Aphrodite and things like that. So Marvel had to have their own. Yes, I know Marvel has Greek gods as well, but they had never become as iconic as Thor in the Norse mythology. And and of course we know Marvel and DC always went back and forth with similar tropes. Zal says, where we go in the chat. I do or did worship the Norse gods, so of course Thor, the comic character, will be one of my favorites. And now Thor is a woman. Azala says that. Foolish Kiwi says, I like Thor too, but I'm not sure how hard I can credit Stan Lee to that setting and character. Maybe for keeping it alive in the West, though. Yeah, absolutely. Azala says, no, Azala, we don't talk about that here. Whatever. That's just it's surprising how triggered people get about those things. If you go back in comic book history, they've taken characters down some really weird pathways. Clones and changing their where they're from and their race and their powers and changing their outfits and changing their origins and then changing it back again and retconning everything. That's happened 1,000,001 times. So what? Thor's a woman. Yeah, it'll be temporary. Thor will come back again and they'll do the same thing over and over again. It's just it's a thing. It happens all the time in comic books. There was some people got triggered when Captain America said, Hail Hydra, and everyone was like, that's stupid. It was like, dude, just read the comic books. You'll find out that it was some kind of thing that changed some other thing. I think it was like the Cosmic Cube, and they went back in time and recruited Captain America into, like, I don't know, Hydra, the Serpent Society or something. They're always doing something like that. All right, so here we are with this listing in this website. Iron Man makes number 3. Iron Man do they tell you when he was introduced? No, they do not tell you when he was introduced. Stan Lee initially created him as a vehicle to explore Cold War themes, such as the role of American technology and business in the fight against communism. But quickly, Iron Man has turned kind of away from that into, deep diving into alcoholism. In many ways, Iron Man is kind of like an asshole, and what a cool character, like to do that. Yeah, as Zala says, it's just nowadays is about making everything as PC as possible. Story be damned. I absolutely agree with you. I would rather people create new characters that are more inclusive, rather than taking basically what is essentially the best way to sell a character, whether it's the Hulk or Thor or Captain America, and then just putting in some kind of minority into that group. I would just feel like, just make new characters and then write them and produce them as great as the characters you already have. That's it. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. I just like, whatever. Like, I mean, I get that there are. Listen, I'm a comic book fan, right? I get that. Yeah, it's just whatever. Foolish Cuties, I like when they do it for story, not just when they do it for political stuff, for marketing groups. It feels fake and tainted. I absolutely agree with you guys. So you guys said amen down the line. I absolutely agree with you. Yes, it's marketing. Oh, Iron Man's popular, so if we put, Ray into a female character and she becomes Iron Man, she'll sell just as well. And we see right through that stuff. We absolutely see right through it. So yeah, whatever. Stan the Man, you create some iconic characters. Wish they just did continue to do it your way. Iron Man, great character. Kind of the arrogant, rich, asshole, alcoholic. Not treating his Pepper Potts very well. Love Pepper Potts. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, really, was Iron Man really was a B-list character at best. Always second fiddle to Captain America and many other characters. If it wasn't for Robert Downey Jr., I doubt Iron Man would ever make it into the upper echelon, although he did become a great foil against Captain America during Civil War, which, I forgot I have my Civil War t-shirt on. Yeah, of course, many of these, you can't see it, doesn't matter. Iron Man was cool in the old comics. I could very much relate, even though I was poor, more from an emotional standpoint, though. Yeah, that's what Foolish Kiwi says. And I mean, of course, none of us thought we were those superheroes, but it's surprising how much relatability Stan Lee wove into so many characters so early in their development, right? Stan's thing about naming Peter Parker, Bruce Banner must have the first and last names being the same letter. Yeah, but Pepper Potts, I mean, he broke the mold a little bit, but there was a ton of like the rhyming, the first and second letters always. I mean, the first and last name having the same letters was just a thing at the time, and I think he after a while he kind of broke away from that, but. Yeah, that was kind of a weird, silly thing. But I do want to say that there was a ton of characters that we could relate to, having a lot of those things. J. Jonah Jameson, the iconic guy. How many of us had bosses that were just assholes, right? You could never, no matter how hard you tried, he just, oh man, he just couldn't. Tesla Ranger says he got that from DC's LL characters. Yeah, Lex Luthor, Clark Kent. Shoot, you know what I mean? Yeah, there's a ton of those characters. And of course, Marvel and DC, they always went back and forth. I mean, they went back and forth month to month, right? There's a ton of DC characters that are basically like reskins of Marvel characters, and the same thing. A ton of Marvel characters that were basically like reskins of, Namor and Aquaman, Superman, and I don't know who, and I guess Thor would be the closest thing at the time. But anyway, shit, I went down a pathway that way. All right. So now we are at number 2 and number 1. I'm sure if you kept track of what we went through before, so let me go back up the list here, because you'll probably know the number 2 and number 1 spot. But just to summarize, we went through number 15 is Fantastic Four, number 14 Daredevil, excuse me, number 13 Scarlet Witch, number 12 the Inhumans, the entire Inhumans family. Number 11, Nick Fury. Number 10, Black Panther. Number 9, Hawkeye. Number 8, Doctor Strange. Number 7, Ant-Man. Number 6, Black Widow. Remember, this isn't my list. Number 5, the Hulk. Number 4, Thor. Number 3, Iron Man. Here we go to number 2 and number 1. Number 2 is the entire X-Men storyline. Everybody in the X-Men. I'm looking at a photo, and it's just got like, Wolverine, Iceman, Storm, Beast, Jean Grey, Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat. Barely use her name Shadowcat anymore. It was Iceman, Cyclops, Angel. Oh, they reprinted some of these characters here. Yes, even some villains, Magneto. Wow, a ton of characters. Okay, anyway, number 2 is, and the story lags. Please, no lagging. Oh, I hate that. Every time I start creeping towards the hour, YouTube is like, dude, you need to get off here unless you get more subscribers. Dazzler. Dazzler number 1. Yeah, right. Dazzler and Jubilee, right? Foolish Kiwi Damn it, Foolish. Sorry, I'll stop. I'm just messing with you. Yeah, number 2 is the X-Men and the entire X-Men pantheon. And of course, number 1 is Peter Parker himself, Spider-Man, created in 1962. It says here, Spider-Man is Marvel's most successful character of all time and the most profitable comic book character ever. With comic book sales, film deals, animated shows, video games, merchandise, and clothing sales, Spider-Man pulls in around $1 billion a year from Marvel. Now, mind you, we know Marvel is actually held by Sony through legal reasons and then given back to Marvel temporarily so that they can use them in the movies. That's still a $1 billion industry with Marvel not having used them. So yeah, Spider-Man is $1 billion just on his own. That's crazy. But so the X-Men, the entire X-Men pantheon, and we all know that Zymox says, I think I'm alone in not liking Spider-Man. I don't know why. You know what? Listen, there's nothing wrong with liking or disliking any character. I personally have always liked Spider-Man. I may not have always liked the storylines they put him through. Yeah. Oh man, Azala, really, dude? He says, I still remember watching that Spider-Man TV show as a kid with the synth voiceover, Radioactive Spider-Man. Dude, I'm old enough to remember the 5-episode television show live action with a guy climbing up a wall, and like you see his hands slipping on the wall as his cable tried to pull him up or down the walls and stuff. And there were people who tried to dress up as Spider-Man climbing up buildings back in like the early 80s. Might have been late 70s, early 80s. There were a bunch of Spider-Men trying to climb up walls and stuff. It was kind of stupid, really, for people to do that. But yeah, Foolish Kiwi says, I like comic Spider-Man, not a fan of the movie Spider-Man, but witty, slightly neurotic, but generally good-hearted Spider-Man is great to me. The old cartoons were awesome too. I love the old cartoons. Spider-Man is Amazing Friends. The other before that, the Spider-Man, the classic song, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Oh man, yeah, he's always come back and forth. And Spider-Man's kind of that classic, like young but intelligent and witty, class clown, but at the same time used his brains a lot. There were I would say more than half of his problems he had to solve using his brilliance to solve the situation, and not just punch somebody in the mouth. And so Spider-Man, and of course he had family problems. He had to take care of his aunt. He had job problems, dealing with J. Jonah Jameson, and absolutely positively iconic character. But let us not forget the X-Men, right? All of us have those X-Men that we love and hate within that whole pantheon. And excuse me, the X-Men are possibly the most widely recognized superhero team among any age group in the world. With the success of heroes like the Hulk, Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four, Stan Lee said he wanted to create a new group of superheroes, but didn't want to explain how they got their powers. So he stated, why don't we just say they're mutants? They were born that way. The original group started off with Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Angel, and Iceman. And of course, we all know that the mutants became an allegory for anyone, for any reason, being in a minority group, right? For whatever reason that is, right? Whether you feel like you're being downtrodden, hell, if you're that one guy at work that everybody, like, for some reason just doesn't like, if you go to another country and you feel like you're out of place, whether it's socially, you just expressing social issues with different people in different ways, and how different people express those things. Magneto and Professor X was voiced as, Stan Lee said it was Martin Luther King and Malcolm X as an allegory for those things. So yeah, so the X-Men having the problems, having superpowers that were kind of out of control and came about during like puberty and stuff. I mean, RPG wise, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons sorcerers are very much like that. Zywok says nerd, yeah, right here. Right on my chest. Zalo says Wolverine is one of those ones I hate and love. I'm with you on that. Foolish Kiwi goes on to say Spider-Man also got surprisingly dark in some parts when he accidentally cracks that girl's neck trying to save her, misjudging the strength of his webbing. Zymok says that sounds pretty cool. Most of my experiences with the films, to be fair. And Azal says now the absolute top spot for me is the Punisher. Oh my God, you got if you're a Punisher fan at all, I didn't think they would do it. Take a look at the Netflix Punisher. You got to see it. What a great series. So yeah, we top out with Spider-Man, but yeah, the X-Men, Wolverine is one of those characters I loved and hated. I kind of loved him before, but Wolverine to me is like, Wolverine has become the Wolverine of Wolverineisms, kind of like Batman's the Batman of Batmanisms, where, they've kind of made them into such a Mary Sue character that you kind of roll your eyes whenever, because it's like, yeah, okay, do you really have to be good at everything all the time? You know what I mean? Like it's yeah, you're great, but come on. So sometimes that's a problem. But yeah, of course, mutants being the allegory for social issues, and of course, Spider-Man, the eternal loner. I never particularly liked Spider-Man being on a team. Team ups, great. Getting along with people, cool. But I absolutely love myself some Spider-Man with the no Iron Spider. I just love the suit and the dirty clothes. The Aunt May, please don't walk in on me while I'm, spraying, fluid all around the room. I love that version of Spider-Man. And role playing wise, Spider-Man is absolutely positively like a great character who's like, on his own, has great skill, but has to use his brains to get around things. The classic dependent character limitation. If you have any game system that has dependence where you have to take care of someone, you got to watch out for them being kidnapped or getting in trouble. And of course, making a character that has like, hey, I'm going to use my dump stat wealth, and then getting into all those problems with that too. Foolish Kiwi says X-Men inspired our tabletops in a way. When making new characters, we generally roll a D20 or D20 or percentile dice. And if you oh, it moved. Sorry. And if you get a freak accident, get the max roll, you'll generally have a mysterious mild power. You know what? In many ways, right? The X-Men kind of like the random mystery power, or we did in a game where we each made characters, and then you had to pick a random character, but you couldn't pick your own, and just gave them like odd powers. The X-Men really incorporated the idea of having the strange limitation. Hey, I've got laser beams, but I can't control them. I can control storms, but I've got claustrophobia. Like all of those things. The I've got powers, but I've also got this weird limitation on how to use them. The Foolish Kiwi goes on to say, which you choose to disclose to the other players or not, the mild mystery power. I love that. I actually have fun with that. Not too many people love rolling their entire character randomly, but I like that. Something. Oh yeah, Foolish Kiwi says, Aunt May, please don't walk in on me while I'm spraying fluid all over the room. Jesus, DBJ, you need to wash your mouth. That was so. Yeah. Hey, I listen. I'm not the only one that had to where he's just like, no, I'm going to wash my own clothes, Aunt May. I know they're standing in the corner. Leave it alone. Yeah, I can't be the only one that thought about that from the Raimi, the Raimi version of the movie. Azala says, I think there's just something to be said for the non-genius, non-powered, non-rich heroes who just do what they do with the grit of normal people. It's why I absolutely love like Conan, Punisher, Question, etc. I can't disagree with you on that. Yeah, I know Daredevil's got, he's blind, he's got special like senses, but I've always been a Daredevil fan for Marvel-wise, and especially for what Stan Lee's created. Of course, that was one website's top 15 characters. I guarantee you Stan Lee's created many others. But yeah, characters like you said, like Punisher, Question, Moon Knight, they are relatable. None of us have superpowers, so they become more relatable. Someone who uses their willpower, uses their intelligence, uses science, uncovers things like an Indiana Jones that uncovers things, and to defeat the bad guy, who might, be mutated or something like that. Tessa Raider says website, boom boom, do 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 do. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to talk. We're going to end this. We're just talking about RPG tropes. Yes, if you play superhero games at all, of course, all of these superheroes represent a specific trope in RPGs, right? The young Spider-Man, the young hero, the X-Men, rolling characters randomly, Thor, being from a godlike character from another world, Doctor Strange, of course, being a wizard. I mean, that is an archetype, right? The brick, the power armor, the wizard, the Psy, the shape changer, the speedster, the martial artist. Those are all tropes, and very much so. The Hulk is a brick. The Fantastic Four is made up of a bunch of things. The Mr. Fantastic's definitely like a shape changer. Invisible Woman is definitely like the Psy. Human Torch is absolutely positively the emitter, the energy projector, the elemental in many ways, using Mutants and Mastermind terminology. He's an elemental, whether it's using fire or controlling electricity or controlling radiation or sound or something. And then of course you have the brick, which is the thing. And all of those characters, you can go all the way through them all and find some kind of trope that they fit into. But even in other role-playing games, whether we're like medieval or far future, science fiction or gritty or noir, we can all pick some kind of thing that makes us relatable to those, special to us. So yeah, I just wanted to I tried getting into a Mutants and Mastermind game, could never find a good group. Yeah, Mutants and Mastermind, great system. I used to own Marvel superheroes. I actually was in a Marvel superheroes game, a face rip game with Nerdarchy for a little while. I had a character that that could change his age. Anyway, it was really kind of bizarre. So, but yeah, face rip. That was anybody who hears face rip, just to let you guys know, face rip or Fazza rip stood for fighting, agility, strength, endurance, reason, intuition, psyche. And your first 4 stats were your physical, that like you added all those points and that's how physically tough you were. And then your last 3 stats were that was like your mental points that you could use. So yeah, it was like your karma. It was your ability you could spend those points to succeed in things. So yeah, it was the face rip. That's where face rip came from the original Marvel superheroes game. I think you could get it for free or nearly free now on many websites. But anyway, guys, just wanted to let you guys just wanted to break away, do a little honorific here for the man, the myth, the legend, Stan Lee. Here I am, of course, in the Spider-Man robe. Avengers right behind me, you know, War Machine, Doctor Strange, and everything. And I thought I just wanted to shout out to him and kind of shape it into our RPG experiences where all those characters kind of represented something that we could relate to, whether it's, you know, being a young kid, being an outsider, heck, being Iron Man, even being a character who really is kind of like an a-hole, but still having fun with that, you know, being a rich industrialist and stuff and not being well liked. So guys, you guys have a good one and I'll see you later. All right.
Stan Lee, may him rest in peace.
Yeah, thanks, babe. Stan Lee, may he rest in peace. Love you, babe. Have a good one. Love you. Bye. Yeah, you too. Guys, everybody, have a great day out there. I'm sure there's going to be tons of tributes out there. I thought I'd give my little 2 cents. So guys, Foolish Kiwi, everybody, have a great one. We will continue this week on talking about the arts and RPGs. But I just want to do something special for somebody who's had a great influence on my life. Just walking to, I just remember walking to 7-Eleven. Yeah, Foolish Kiwi says, and by DBJ's wife with that shout out. I don't know if you heard her. I hope you did. You guys heard her, because she feels as the loss like I do. She's very emotional and she feels like, you know, he's had such a great experience. I got a chance to see him when he came here to Columbus, Ohio. I didn't really get a chance to have, you know, get a picture taken with him and whatnot, but he's just like I call him the oldest kid, right? Imagine if you could just be a kid like that. Oh, Foolish Kiwi says loud and clear. Great. That's awesome. Glad she got in on here. But I just remember walking down the street, going to 7-Eleven, looking at the little spinner rack with the comic books on it, and finding comic books that way before I graduated as a kid. Because I was stupid. I'd roll them up and stick them in my pocket. And then I graduated up to, you know, yes, bad comic book collector, bad. And then I graduated up to actually going to the comic book store, because many of them were like these dark places, and it was almost like you had to be invited in. But once you get invited in, you know, people just give you the head nod, like, what's up, what you looking for? I'm looking for some old X-Men. Come on, alphabetical order, digging through the plastics, you know, the hardbacks and stuff like that, and just, you know, and pulling them out and everything. That was just a great experience. Reading through the storylines, then eventually getting to know some of the artists and writers, and finding the storylines change after a period of time. One storyline would end, they'd get a new writer and artist onto it. And then we had that love-hate relationship, like, oh no, there's a new artist, I hate that guy, or what kind of storyline is this? Spider-Man's a clone. What the hell? You know what I mean? All those weird storylines that sometimes we're just like, let's not forget that not every storyline was the greatest. You know what I mean? So guys, have a good one. Everyone out there in RPG land, love you guys. Thank you for joining in. I hope as you start looking through all of and participating in all of the tributes, I hope this one becomes one that makes it into that pantheon of thanks for Stan the Man. So Stan Lee, thank you very much for making my life great. We really appreciate you. Everyone have a very great day. Thank you. Bye.